The Apache widow pretended to sleep, and what he heard shocked the rancher. The air was hot and still, carrying with it the scent of dust and dry grass. Rancher Tom McAllister wiped his brow with a handkerchief as he walked along the edge of his property, checking the fences and making sure none of his cattle had wandered too far. His life had always been simple, but it was not an easy one. Years of living on this land had taught him patience, hard work, and the importance of staying alert. Out here, one could never take anything for granted, whether it was the weather, a stampeding herd, or strangers passing through. Tom had grown used to the quiet that stretched across his land. Most days were filled with the hum of horses, the lowing of cattle, and the occasional caw of a raven. He liked it that way. Life on a ranch could be lonely, but it gave him a sense of freedom and peace that cities never could. He often thought about the people in town who rushed about their lives, worrying about things that seemed unimportant out here. Out here, a man had to rely on himself and the land. As he approached the fence line, Tom noticed something unusual. In the distance, a lone figure was moving across the plains. At first, he thought it might be a rider returning from town or a traveler passing by. But as the figure came closer, he realized it was someone on horseback. The rider moved steadily but with caution, as if they were unsure about the land ahead or concerned about being noticed. Tom squinted against the sun, trying to make out more details. The closer the rider came, the more Tom could see that it was a woman. Her clothes were worn and dusty, her dark hair pulled back in a practical way that suggested she had been traveling for a long time. Her horse was tired, its ribs showing faintly under the skin, and its coat was matted with dust from the trail. Tom felt a pang of concern. It was rare for someone to travel alone in these parts, especially a woman. Out here, danger could come from anywhere, whether from wild animals, harsh weather, or men with less than honorable intentions. When the woman finally reached the ranch, she slowed her horse to a cautious trot. She kept her head down, not making direct eye contact, but Tom could see the wariness in her posture. She was clearly exhausted from days on the trail, yet there was a strength in the way she held herself, as if she had survived hardships that would have broken most people. Tom stepped forward, raising a hand in greeting. "Evenin'," he said in his usual calm tone. "You lost or just passing through?" The woman lifted her eyes, revealing dark, expressive eyes that held a mix of fear and determination. I need shelter," she said softly, her voice carrying a quiet urgency. I've come a long way." Tom studied her for a moment. There was no sign of weapons, nothing that suggested trouble, but the story in her eyes told him more than words could. She had seen hardship and she was looking for safety. The ranch was modest, a small cabin and a few outbuildings, but it was a safe place for someone to rest. Tom was no stranger to helping travelers, especially those in need. He motioned for her to follow him toward the cabin. "My name's Tom McAllister," he said as he led the way. "This is my place. Not much, but it's safe. You can rest here." The woman nodded, her lips pressed together as if she were holding back tears or words she didn't dare speak. "Thank you," she whispered. I'm Kaya." Tom helped her dismount and led her horse to a small corral. He gave the animal water and a bit of feed, then brought Kaya inside the cabin. The interior was simple, a wooden table, a few chairs, and a small stove in the corner. There were 2 beds, one of which he gestured toward. "You can take that bed," he said. "You look like you could use some rest. Eat something first if you can." Kaya nodded again, her movements slow and deliberate. She didn't ask for more, didn't complain, and seemed almost relieved just to have a place to sit. She drank water from a tin cup and ate a small portion of bread and dried meat that Tom offered her. There was a quiet dignity about her, a resilience that spoke of someone who had faced challenges most people couldn't imagine. As the evening wore on, the two exchanged few words. Tom respected her silence. He knew better than to press someone who had clearly suffered. but he was curious. He had grown up hearing stories of the Apache people, of the struggles they faced and the courage they displayed in times of hardship. Kaya's story, whatever it was etched in the lines of her face and the way she carried herself. When the meal was finished, Kaya stood and moved toward the bed. Tom watched her carefully, noticing the careful way she adjusted the blanket and the way her eyes scanned the room, always alert. She lay down slowly, pretending to relax, but Tom sensed that she was not entirely at ease. It was the kind of vigilance that came from years of surviving in a world where trust was not easily given. "Get some rest," Tom said softly. "You've had a long journey." Kaya nodded, closing her eyes, but Tom could tell she wasn't asleep yet. There was a subtle tension in her body, a readiness for whatever might come. He shook his head slightly, wondering about the story she carried and what had brought her to his doorstep. Outside, the wind began to pick up, rustling the dry grass and sending small clouds of dust across the plains. Tom stepped to the window and looked out, thinking about how strange life could be. One moment, everything was quiet and predictable, and the next, someone could appear on your land who would change the rhythm of your days without even speaking much. Kaya had arrived silently, yet her presence felt significant. As night fell, the temperature dropped, and the stars began to dot the sky. Tom made sure the doors were locked and the fire in the stove was low but warm. He could still hear Kaya shifting in the bed, pretending to sleep, and it made him wonder what memories or fears were running through her mind. He didn't ask. Some things were not spoken, at least not yet. Instead, he returned to his own bed, lying down with a sense of cautious hope. Maybe tomorrow, he thought, she would begin to trust him. Maybe she would share her story. For now, he was content to offer shelter, food, and a safe place to rest. Out here, small gestures mattered more than words, and the quiet bond of trust could be more powerful than anything else. And so, the night passed with the wind whispering through the mountains, the horses settled in the corral, and Kaya lying in the bed, her eyes closed but her mind alert, pretending to sleep while the rancher watched over her. It was the beginning of a story neither of them could yet imagine, a story of courage, secrets, and the unexpected ways lives could intersect in the vast, open landscape of the American West. The night grew darker, and the stars shone brightly above the vast expanse of the Arizona plains. The moon hung low, casting silver light over the ranch, illuminating the wooden fences and the quiet corral where Kaya's horse stood, patiently nibbling at the sparse grass. Inside the cabin, the air was still, with only the faint crackle of the dying fire in the stove breaking the silence. Tom McAllister lay in his bed, but he couldn't sleep. His mind wandered to the mysterious woman he had taken in. He thought about the way she had ridden alone across the harsh landscape, her horse exhausted and her clothes dusty and torn. There was something about her, something that told him she had seen more than most people ever would in their lives. He couldn't shake the feeling that her story was far from ordinary, and curiosity gnawed at him. But he also knew he had to respect her space. She had trusted him enough to enter his home, and trust was not something to take lightly. Meanwhile, Kaya lay in her bed, eyes closed, but she was far from asleep. She was alert, listening carefully to every sound in the cabin. The creak of the floorboards, the soft whisper of the wind outside, the low snort of her horse from the corral, all of it mattered. She had learned long ago that danger often came quietly and without warning. Tonight, she pretended to be asleep, just as she had learned to do many times before in her life. It was a habit that had kept her safe, a small shield against the unpredictability of the world around her. As the hours passed, Tom heard a soft sound coming from the corner of the room. At first he thought it might be the wind moving something, but then he realized it was coming from Kaya's bed. It was subtle, a faint rustling as if she were shifting beneath the blanket. Tom's curiosity piqued. He did not move, choosing instead to observe. He had seen many travelers over the years, but few had carried the weight of history and pain in their eyes as Kaya did. There was a story hidden behind that quiet exterior, and he wondered what it might be. Outside, the desert night was alive with sound. Crickets chirped in rhythm, a distant owl hooted from a nearby tree, and the wind whispered through the dry grass. These sounds were familiar to Tom, but to Kaya, they were a backdrop to a world filled with uncertainty. She had survived raids, seen villages destroyed, and witnessed people she cared for vanish. Tonight, she could afford a moment of rest, but she could not let her guard down completely. Pretending to sleep was her way of maintaining control, even in the presence of someone she hoped she could trust. Tom could not resist the pull of curiosity. He quietly slipped from his bed and moved toward Kaya's side of the room. The floorboards creaked slightly beneath his weight, but Kaya did not move. Her stillness was convincing, almost unnervingly so. Tom took a deep breath and listened closely. He could hear her soft breathing, steady and measured, yet there was a subtle tension in the way she held herself. It was as if her mind was elsewhere, calculating, remembering, and planning all at once. For a long moment, Tom watched her, trying to piece together what he could about her life. He wondered about the journey that had brought her to his doorstep, about the people she had left behind, and about the secrets she carried with her. He respected her silence, knowing that some stories were not told lightly. But a small part of him wished he could know more, to understand the depths of her experiences and the challenges she had faced. Kaya shifted slightly, just enough to reveal a hint of her hands under the blanket. Tom's heart skipped a beat when he noticed the way her fingers moved, almost as if she were holding something small and precious. He did not speak. He did not want to startle her. Instead, he watched, understanding that this moment was part of the delicate dance of trust that had begun between them. She was testing him in her own quiet way as much as he was trying to understand her. Hours passed, and the night grew colder. Tom returned to his bed, but kept his ears tuned to the subtle noises around him. Every sound seemed amplified in the stillness of the night. He could hear Kaya's soft breathing, the faint creak of her movements, and the occasional whisper of the wind through the cracks in the cabin walls. There was a tension in the air, a feeling that something was hidden just beneath the surface, waiting to reveal itself. Kaya's thoughts wandered back to her village, to the people she had known and lost. The raid had come swiftly, leaving destruction in its wake. She had watched as homes were burned, families scattered, and lives shattered. In the chaos, she had managed to save a few things: letters, small valuables, and memories that carried the names of those who had survived. Each item she had hidden carried weight, a reminder of the past and a responsibility for the future. Pretending to sleep was not just a matter of caution. It was a way to protect what was left, to ensure that nothing she carried could fall into the wrong hands. Tom, meanwhile, could not help but reflect on the resilience of the human spirit. He had lived a hard life on the ranch, facing droughts, storms, and the challenges of managing a remote property. Yet, the strength he sensed in Kaya went beyond physical endurance. There was a courage in her eyes, a determination that had carried her through unimaginable hardships. He admired it silently, knowing that some lessons in life came from witnessing others face adversity with quiet dignity. As dawn approached, the first light of morning began to filter through the cracks in the cabin walls. The desert slowly transformed from shadowed mystery to a landscape bathed in soft golden hues. Tom finally rose, moving quietly to the kitchen to prepare a simple breakfast. Kaya remained in bed, still pretending to sleep, but Tom noticed the subtle signs of restlessness, the slight twitch of her fingers, the faint shift of her shoulders. She was alert, even in apparent slumber, a testament to the vigilance that had kept her alive. After a while, Kaya sat up, rubbing her eyes as if waking from a long dream. Tom offered her a small cup of coffee and some bread, which she accepted with a quiet nod. They spoke little, letting the comfort of routine fill the space between them. Yet both were aware that the night had brought them closer in subtle ways. Trust had begun to grow, not through words, but through observation, respect, and shared understanding. Kaya knew that the journey ahead was uncertain. The road to rebuilding what had been lost would be long and filled with obstacles. But for the first time in many weeks, she felt a glimmer of hope. Tom's ranch was a safe haven, a place where she could gather her strength and plan her next steps. The quiet of the morning, the soft warmth of the sun, and the simple kindness of a stranger gave her a sense of stability she had not felt in a long time. Tom, for his part, was equally thoughtful. He had taken in many travelers over the years, but Kaya's presence felt different. There was a depth to her story that he could sense, even without knowing the details. He resolved to offer her support in any way he could, understanding that sometimes the smallest gestures, food, shelter, a listening ear, could mean more than words. The bond that had begun during the night would continue to grow, slowly and quietly, as trust and respect deepened between them. By mid-morning, Kaya had dressed and helped with small chores around the cabin. She fed the horses, swept the floor, and even tended to the small garden that Tom had cultivated. Each action was deliberate, careful, and efficient, reflecting her years of experience surviving in difficult circumstances. Tom watched her with admiration, realizing that her strength was not just in endurance but in her ability to move through life with purpose, even when faced with uncertainty. As the day unfolded, the quiet tension of the night gave way to a sense of calm determination. Tom and Kaya worked side by side, the silence between them comfortable rather than awkward. There was a mutual understanding, unspoken but deeply felt. They both knew that the events of the night had marked the beginning of something significant, a partnership built on trust, vigilance, and the unspoken recognition of each other's strengths. And so, as the sun climbed higher in the sky, and the desert came alive with the sounds of wind and wildlife, the ranch settled into a rhythm of quiet activity. Kaya continued to pretend sleep when she needed to, but Tom's presence offered a sense of security she had not felt in a long time. Together, they navigated the delicate balance between caution and trust, aware that the past had shaped them both, but that the future held the possibility of safety, understanding, and perhaps even friendship. The night's whispers had been replaced by the soft bustle of morning, but the memory lingered. Tom knew that Kaya's story was far from over, and he felt a mix of curiosity and respect. She had arrived on his doorstep, weary and cautious, yet full of quiet strength. The journey ahead would be challenging, but he felt certain that together, they could face whatever came next. Days passed quietly on Tom McAllister's ranch, the hot sun sweeping across the Arizona plains, warming the wooden cabin and the dry earth beyond. The air carried the faint scent of sagebrush and dust, a familiar comfort to Tom as he went about his daily chores. Kaya moved alongside him, quietly tending to the horses, the small garden, and the cattle. On the surface, life seemed calm and ordinary, yet beneath that calm, tension and secrets lingered, quietly shaping every moment. Kaya had settled into the routine of the ranch, but she remained ever alert. Each creak of the cabin floor, every rustle in the corral, and every whisper of wind outside caught her attention. Her nights were spent in careful watchfulness, pretending to sleep, listening, and thinking. She was hiding more than just her exhaustion. She was guarding information that could affect lives beyond the ranch's fences. This information was precious, dangerous if revealed to the wrong people, and she could not afford a single mistake. Tom, unaware of the full scope of her caution, began to notice small, unusual behaviors. Sometimes, he would hear her quietly whispering when she thought he was occupied with chores outside. At first, he dismissed it as absent-minded muttering, but the tone and clarity of her voice suggested otherwise. She was not merely talking to herself. She was sharing thoughts, carefully calculated words, as if rehearsing something important. This puzzled him. He respected her privacy but could not suppress the rising curiosity. One evening, as the sky turned shades of orange and pink, and the first stars began to appear, Tom returned from the corral to find the cabin unusually quiet. Kaya appeared to be asleep, the dim fire casting shadows across her face, but something about the stillness felt different, more deliberate. Tom paused near the door, listening closely. Then he heard it, a soft, deliberate voice speaking just above a whisper. He could not make out the exact words, but the rhythm and intent were unmistakable. She was speaking, but not to him. Carefully, Tom moved closer, keeping to the shadows, and crouched just enough to hear without being seen. Kaya lay on the bed, eyes closed, breathing evenly as if in deep sleep. Yet beneath the blanket, her hands moved subtly and her lips parted to speak softly. "No, they must not know yet. I have to keep them safe," she whispered. Tom froze. His mind raced. Who was she talking to? And what did she mean by keeping them safe? He stayed motionless, heart pounding, as the words continued. Kaya's voice was low and urgent, but controlled. "I have their names, I have their locations, and if this falls into the wrong hands, it could ruin everything." She paused, glancing over her shoulder as if confirming that no one was watching, though Tom remained unseen. Then she continued, her voice steady but tense. "We have to wait until it is safe, only then can we act." Tom's mind struggled to piece together what he was hearing. There was a careful method to her words, a strategy that suggested she was not merely a traveler seeking refuge. She had a purpose, a mission, and it involved others, people whose lives depended on her secrecy. Suddenly, the image of a weary, exhausted widow faded, replaced by someone far more capable, resourceful, and determined than he had imagined. As he listened, Tom realized that Kaya's whispered words held weight. She spoke of plans, of survival, and of safeguarding people who were likely hiding from danger. Each sentence painted a picture of someone who had experienced loss, yet refused to let it define her entirely. She carried not only her own grief, but also the responsibility for others. The thought was both daunting and awe-inspiring. He had stumbled into a story far greater than a simple act of kindness in helping a stranded traveler. Kaya shifted slightly, and Tom felt a surge of anxiety. Would she notice him? Would she see that he had overheard her secret? But she remained still, eyes closed, lips moving softly as she continued her whispered conversation. "They trust me. They don't know who else can be trusted. I must protect them until the time is right. Everything depends on timing and patience." Tom realized that these were not just words. They were a careful plan, a blueprint for keeping people safe in dangerous circumstances. Hours passed like this, with Tom crouched in the shadows, listening and absorbing every detail he could. He marveled at the wisdom and courage that Kaya displayed, silently orchestrating the safety of others while carrying her own burdens. Her ability to remain calm and deliberate under pressure revealed a strength that few could match. He felt both admiration and a deep respect for her. She was a survivor in every sense of the word, someone who had transformed her grief into action, and she had trusted him by entering his home. Finally, Kaya's voice softened, her words turning more reflective. "I cannot fail them. I cannot let fear dictate my actions. I must be their shield, even if it costs me everything." Tom's heart ached as he listened, understanding the gravity of her mission. She had endured so much and yet remained steadfast in her commitment to others. It was clear that the trials she had faced had forged not only resilience, but also wisdom beyond her years. Tom knew he could not remain silent forever. He had learned enough to understand that Kaya was protecting lives and carrying secrets too important to ignore. Yet he also realized the need for caution. Any misstep, any word spoken too soon, could compromise the very people she sought to protect. He decided to wait, to watch, and to act only when the time was right. He could not rush her, and he could not impose his curiosity on her mission. The night stretched on, and the shadows in the cabin deepened. Kaya's whispered words became softer, more deliberate, as she reviewed the details in her mind. Tom observed quietly, noting the precision of her strategy and the careful way she measured each word. It was as if every syllable carried weight, and every pause held meaning. He felt humbled by her discipline and amazed at the complexity of her role in the lives of others. At one point, Kaya reached under the blanket and retrieved a small bundle of papers, letters, and notes. She unfolded them carefully, her fingers tracing the names and locations written in neat handwriting. Tom's curiosity soared as he realized these were records, a ledger of sorts, documenting the people she was protecting. Each note, each carefully written word was a lifeline, a testament to her dedication and foresight. She spoke again softly, as if speaking to the people she could not yet reveal to the world. "We will survive, and we will endure, and we will rebuild. They must remain hidden until the danger passes, until it is safe for them to step into the light again." Tom could hardly believe the courage and thoughtfulness he was witnessing. Kaya's role went far beyond that of a refugee or survivor. She was a guardian, a strategist, and a quiet hero, acting in the shadows to preserve life and hope. Eventually, the night gave way to the first hints of dawn, a pale light filtering through the cracks in the cabin walls. Kaya carefully placed the papers back under the blanket, securing them with a practiced hand. She closed her eyes and exhaled, a faint sigh of relief escaping her lips. Tom, still hidden in the shadows, felt a mix of awe and admiration. He had witnessed a side of her few people would ever see, a combination of courage, intelligence, and unwavering dedication to others. When he finally stepped away from the bed, Tom felt a quiet determination forming within him. He had been given a glimpse into a life of purpose and responsibility far greater than his own. He realized that he could be more than just a bystander. He could support her in small ways, providing safety, understanding, and trust. The revelation of her mission had changed everything, transforming the way he saw her from a weary traveler to a remarkable individual who had survived tragedy while protecting those who could not protect themselves. As Kaya pretended to sleep for the remainder of the morning, Tom quietly went about his chores, his mind alive with thoughts of what he had overheard. Every small detail, the careful whispers, the precise movements, the hidden bundle of notes, reminded him of the extraordinary courage she carried within her. He knew that their lives had intertwined for a reason, and that the coming days would reveal even more about her story, her mission, and the remarkable resilience of the human spirit. By the time the sun had fully risen over the plains, painting the land in brilliant shades of gold and orange, Tom was certain of one thing: Kaya was not just a widow seeking refuge. She was a guardian, a protector, and a strategist who had faced loss, danger, and uncertainty with a strength that few could imagine. And though he did not yet understand the full scope of her mission, he knew that their journey together was only just beginning, a journey that would test courage, trust, and the bonds that can form in the quiet spaces of shared purpose. The morning sun poured through the small windows of the cabin, filling the room with warmth. Tom McAllister moved quietly, careful not to disturb Kaya, who still pretended to sleep, though her eyes opened occasionally, scanning the room and the horizon beyond. For several days he had watched her, listened to her whispers, and tried to understand her purpose without ever pressuring her. But today, something felt different. There was a tension in the air, a feeling that the secrets she carried were ready to emerge. Tom could sense it in the subtle way she moved, in the quiet strength that radiated from her every action. Kaya had grown accustomed to the rhythm of life at the ranch. She had tended the animals, helped with chores, and even begun to feel a small sense of safety in this place far from the chaos that had destroyed her village. Yet, even in this calm, she remained vigilant. Her nights were still filled with careful listening, her days with careful observation. She had made a promise to the people she had left behind, to protect them at all costs, to keep them hidden from danger until the time was right. It was a promise she had honored for weeks, and it weighed heavily on her heart. Tom, meanwhile, had been patient. He had learned to respect the quiet and to observe rather than rush into questions. But the moment of revelation had been building in his mind, fueled by what he had overheard in the night. He had seen the way Kaya handled her secrets, the way she whispered to herself as if the words carried life and hope. He had seen the papers and letters she carefully guarded, and he knew they contained something important. Today, he resolved, he would gently confront her, not to demand answers, but to offer trust and understanding. As the afternoon light spilled across the cabin floor, Tom approached Kaya, who was sitting by the small window, polishing a piece of equipment she had brought from her travels. Her hands moved with careful precision, but her eyes were alert, watching him closely. He took a deep breath and spoke softly. "Kaya," he began, "I know you've been carrying something important. I don't want to rush you or make you feel unsafe, but I think it's time we talked." Kaya paused, her hands stilling. She looked at him, her dark eyes steady and measured. For a long moment she said nothing, as if weighing his words, testing whether he could be trusted with the truth. Finally, she nodded slightly. "You've been listening," she said quietly, her voice calm but firm. "I suppose it's time you knew, but you must promise to keep what I tell you here. No one else can know." Tom nodded without hesitation. "You have my word," he said. "Whatever it is, I'll respect it." Kaya took a deep breath and began. She spoke of her village, once a vibrant community of families who had lived peacefully in the desert for generations. But a raid had struck their homes without warning, destroying houses, scattering families, and taking lives. Kaya had been among the few to escape. In the chaos, she had salvaged what she could, letters, records, and small possessions that held the names and locations of those who had survived. "These people," she explained, her voice steady despite the memories she revisited, "are hiding. Some are in the mountains, some in small towns, scattered so no one can find them. They trust me to protect their identities. If the wrong people knew, they could be hurt, or worse." Her hands trembled slightly as she held the small bundle of papers, carefully wrapped in cloth. "I have to be their shield. I cannot fail them." Tom listened, struck by the weight of her words. He realized that Kaya was far more than a widow seeking refuge. She was a guardian, quietly working to ensure the safety of many lives. Her calm demeanor belied the enormous responsibility she carried. He felt a mix of awe and respect, understanding that the courage she displayed was not born from recklessness, but from necessity, determination, and a deep sense of duty. "I understand now why you pretended to sleep," Tom said softly. "You needed to keep watch to protect them even here, and I've been part of this whether I realized it or not." Kaya nodded, her eyes reflecting relief and a hint of gratitude. "I had to be sure. Anyone who knew too much could put them at risk. Even someone like you, someone I trust, needed to see the care I take before I could fully reveal the truth." They spent hours talking, Kaya recounting the journey she had taken to check on the survivors, the strategies she had used to keep their locations secret, and the difficult decisions she had made along the way. Each story revealed her intelligence, courage, and unwavering dedication. She had traveled alone through dangerous terrain, negotiated with strangers for information, and faced moments of despair without faltering. Every action had been deliberate, every decision measured. Tom found himself inspired by her resilience. He had faced hardships on the ranch, but nothing compared to the challenges Kaya had endured. Yet she had not only survived, she had acted to preserve life, to protect others at great personal risk. He realized that her strength was not just in surviving adversity, but in using that adversity to do good, quietly and without recognition. As the afternoon faded into evening, the bond between them deepened. Tom offered his assistance, suggesting ways he could help without compromising the safety of those Kaya was protecting. Together, they devised small plans, messages to be sent discreetly, provisions to be gathered, and safe routes to ensure the survivors remained hidden. Kaya welcomed his support, grateful for the additional help but careful to maintain the secrecy of her mission. The conversation turned to hope. Kaya spoke of rebuilding, of helping her people reconnect when it was safe, and of ensuring that their lives could regain stability and security. She spoke with determination, painting a picture of a future where the survivors could live without fear, guided by careful planning and cautious patience. Tom felt a profound respect for her vision and a sense of pride in being part of something so meaningful. By nightfall, the cabin was quiet again, but the atmosphere had changed. What had once been a place of cautious observation and hidden whispers had become a space of trust, collaboration, and shared purpose. Tom and Kaya had crossed the invisible barrier between strangers and allies, united by a common goal: the protection and survival of lives threatened by past violence. As they prepared for the night, Kaya carefully secured the bundle of papers under her blanket, a protective gesture born from habit and necessity. Tom watched, understanding the importance of each movement. The night ahead would be peaceful, but it was not idle. Both were aware that vigilance remained essential. Trust had been established, but the work of safeguarding lives was ongoing. In the days that followed, the ranch became more than a refuge for Kaya. It became a small hub of planning and coordination, a quiet place where the seeds of hope could be nurtured. Tom continued his daily routines, but now he moved with a heightened sense of purpose, aware of the importance of discretion, patience, and support. Kaya's presence had changed the rhythm of his life, introducing both responsibility and a sense of connection to a cause greater than himself. The revelation of Kaya's mission had transformed the dynamic between them. No longer was she merely a guest. She was a partner in a delicate and crucial endeavor. Tom understood the magnitude of what she was doing, and he felt honored to play even a small role. Together, they began to navigate the challenges ahead, balancing secrecy, safety, and the practical needs of daily life on the ranch. In quiet moments, Kaya would reflect on her past, the losses she had endured, and the people she had sworn to protect. She felt the weight of responsibility, but also a quiet satisfaction in knowing that she had taken action, that she had turned her grief into purpose. Tom, observing her resilience and wisdom, felt a deep respect and admiration that words could scarcely convey. He had learned that courage could take many forms, and that true strength often lay in quiet, deliberate action rather than bold, dramatic gestures. By the end of the week, the relationship between them had solidified. They moved through their routines with a shared understanding, a silent communication that spoke of trust, vigilance, and mutual respect. Kaya's secret, once a source of tension and mystery, had become a bridge between them, connecting their lives in ways neither had anticipated. Together, they faced the uncertainty of the future with determination and hope, ready to meet challenges with courage, intelligence, and careful planning. The revelation of Kaya's mission had changed everything. Tom had come to the realization that the widow he had taken in was no ordinary traveler. She was a guardian, a protector, and a strategist, quietly working to preserve life and hope in a world that had taken so much from her. And as the sun set over the plains, casting long shadows across the cabin and the ranch beyond, both Tom and Kaya understood that this was only the beginning of a journey that would test their courage, deepen their trust, and reveal the extraordinary strength of the human spirit. The days that followed were filled with a quiet sense of purpose. The sun rose early over the Arizona plains, casting golden light over the ranch, and the wind carried the familiar scent of dust and sagebrush. Tom McAllister moved about the property with a sense of determination he had never felt before, aware that every action he took could make a difference for Kaya and for the people she protected. The ranch had always been a place of hard work and routine, but now it had become a sanctuary, a hub of hope, and a place where courage and careful planning could turn the tide for those who had suffered. Kaya, too, had settled into a rhythm that balanced vigilance with moments of rest. She continued to pretend to sleep at times, but her movements were more measured, less tense, as she began to trust Tom fully. The bond between them had grown steadily, built on respect, shared understanding, and the quiet acknowledgement of the weight they both carried. Each day, she reviewed her notes and the small bundle of letters she had saved from her village, making plans and ensuring that the survivors remained safe. Yet she was no longer alone. Tom's presence provided support, safety, and reassurance, a partnership that strengthened her resolve. The ranch became a small center of quiet coordination. Kaya began organizing the messages and supplies she had gathered for the people in hiding, carefully ensuring that nothing could be traced back to them. Tom assisted where he could, offering practical help, mending fences, preparing food, and arranging safe routes, while respecting the secrecy that was so vital to the mission. Together they worked in harmony, a team forged by necessity, trust, and the shared goal of protecting lives. As the days turned into weeks, news came from the survivors. Small notes arrived, hidden in clever ways to avoid detection. Each letter carried updates, names, locations, and messages of gratitude. Kaya read them carefully, her eyes lighting up with relief and hope as she realized that her efforts were making a tangible difference. She shared the news with Tom, whose admiration for her courage and intelligence deepened. They celebrated these small victories quietly, knowing that each success was a step toward rebuilding lives and ensuring safety for those who had endured so much. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink, Kaya and Tom sat outside the cabin, watching the wind sweep across the plains. The air was still and warm, and the horses grazed quietly in the corral. Kaya's eyes were thoughtful, reflecting the past weeks of hard work and planning. Tom broke the silence, his voice calm but filled with respect. "You've done more than I could have imagined," he said. "Not just surviving but protecting others, keeping hope alive." "I'm proud to know you." Kaya smiled faintly, a mixture of gratitude and humility in her expression. "I couldn't do it alone," she replied. "You've made this place safe, and your support, it has made all the difference. I feel stronger knowing I don't have to carry everything myself." Their conversation drifted to stories of the past, of villages and families, of hardships faced and lessons learned. Kaya shared memories of her people, their traditions, and the small joys that had been destroyed by the raid. Tom listened with rapt attention, realizing that her past had shaped her in ways that were both painful and inspiring. The hardships she had endured had forged her strength, and her commitment to others had transformed her grief into purpose. As night fell, the cabin was bathed in the soft glow of firelight. Kaya carefully reviewed her notes one last time before placing them in a safe spot under her blanket. Tom watched, understanding the significance of each movement, each careful action. This was more than survival. It was stewardship, a deliberate effort to protect life and preserve hope. The weight of responsibility was clear, yet Kaya carried it with grace and courage, inspiring Tom in ways he had never anticipated. In the days that followed, the ranch became a beacon of safety. Kaya's careful coordination ensured that supplies reached those in hiding, messages were delivered discreetly, and the survivors could communicate without fear of exposure. Tom and Kaya worked side by side, their bond growing stronger with every shared task, every quiet moment of planning, and every small success that reassured them that their efforts were making a difference. The sense of community began to grow slowly. People who had once been isolated found hope in the knowledge that someone was watching over them, protecting them from danger. Kaya's careful planning and dedication had created a network of safety, and Tom's steady presence provided stability and trust. Together, they had transformed the ranch into more than a home. It had become a sanctuary, a place where courage, intelligence, and kindness intersected to create a safer world for those who had known only fear. One afternoon, Kaya received news that some of the survivors were ready to move closer, to begin the cautious process of rebuilding their lives. The relief she felt was profound, tempered by the awareness that challenges still lay ahead. Tom helped prepare the ranch to accommodate the newcomers, arranging sleeping areas, providing food, and ensuring that every precaution was taken to maintain security. The arrival of these people marked a turning point, a step from survival toward recovery, from fear toward hope. When the survivors arrived, Kaya greeted them with warmth and quiet strength. She had learned the importance of patience, of listening carefully, and of providing reassurance in times of uncertainty. Tom assisted, offering practical help and a steady presence. Together, they ensured that everyone felt safe, cared for, and valued. The ranch was alive with cautious activity, but it was a calm, purposeful energy that spoke of resilience and determination. Over time, the relationships between the survivors, Kaya and Tom, deepened. They shared stories of the past, exchanged knowledge about survival and the land, and began to plan for the future. Kaya's leadership and courage inspired others to take initiative, while Tom's practical skills and calm demeanor provided guidance and support. The once lonely ranch had transformed into a small but thriving community, united by shared experiences and a common goal, to rebuild lives and protect one another. Kaya herself felt a sense of peace she had not known in many months. Her mission, once shrouded in secrecy and fear, was beginning to bear fruit. People were safe, hope was returning, and her careful planning had created a foundation upon which they could rebuild. Yet she remained vigilant, knowing that caution was still necessary. The past had taught her that safety could be fragile, and she would not take it for granted. Tom watched her often, quietly admiring the quiet determination that had guided her through so much. He realized that her courage was not just about facing danger. It was about leadership, foresight, and the ability to inspire trust. She had carried unimaginable burdens, yet she had done so with grace and intelligence. Her presence had changed his life as much as he had changed hers, forging a bond built on respect, trust, and shared purpose. As weeks turned into months, the ranch continued to thrive. The survivors began to rebuild their lives in small but meaningful ways. Children laughed and played in the fields, families worked together to repair homes, and the community began to flourish quietly, away from the dangers that had once threatened them. Kaya and Tom remained at the center, providing guidance, protection, and support, ensuring that their efforts would continue to bear fruit. One evening, as the sun set and painted the sky in brilliant shades of red and gold, Kaya and Tom sat outside the cabin, reflecting on all that had transpired. The wind was warm and gentle, carrying the scent of the desert and the faint sound of animals settling for the night. They spoke softly, sharing hopes for the future and the quiet satisfaction of seeing lives restored. "You've done something incredible," Tom said, his voice filled with admiration. "You've taken tragedy and turned it into hope. You've saved lives and given people a chance to start again." Kaya smiled, her eyes reflecting gratitude and humility. "I could not have done it alone," she said. "You've been a part of this too. Your trust, your support, it has made all the difference. Together, we've created something stronger than fear, stronger than loss." The sun finally dipped below the horizon, leaving the ranch bathed in the soft glow of twilight. Kaya felt a quiet sense of fulfillment, knowing that her mission, once fraught with danger and uncertainty, had succeeded in its purpose. Tom felt the deep satisfaction of having played a role in something meaningful, something far greater than himself. The Apache widow who had once pretended to sleep had revealed her courage, intelligence, and unwavering dedication to others. Through her actions, lives had been saved, hope had been restored, and a community had been given the chance to flourish. And in the process, a bond had been forged between Kaya and Tom, and between the people whose lives had been touched by her bravery. The ranch became a symbol of resilience and quiet heroism, a testament to the power of courage, trust, and collaboration. Kaya's story, once hidden in whispers and careful actions, had become a story of survival, compassion, and hope. And as the night settled over the desert, the people at the ranch rested safely, knowing that their lives were in the hands of someone who had faced loss and danger and emerged stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever. In the end, the widow who had once been alone and uncertain had transformed not only the lives of those around her, but had also left an indelible mark on the rancher who had offered her shelter. Their journey together had been one of trust, courage, and quiet determination, proving that even in the harshest circumstances, hope, compassion, and strength could prevail.